So today's a special episode of the podcast and also for the YouTube channel. This is a year in review. I've been talking about everything we've been up to in Embodiment Unlimited, special Christmas edition, just with me, Mark Walsh. So I have really enjoyed the podcast, actually, if we're just talking about the podcast this year. Running a business, I'm going to be honest, less so. Less so enjoyed running a business. Teaching our courses, love it, particularly the main courses we do. KEC, Certificate of Embodiment Coaching, starts in Feb, quick plug. Embodiment Toolkit, second main course we did one on trauma superpowers. Courses have been solid this year, just really felt like teaching's what I love. I was back to that. Live workshops, loved this year, loved teaching all over the place in many, many different countries. Slovenia, recently the Netherlands, I was in Texas, in Austin. Yeah, I mean, it's quite a privilege, really, to get to teach embodiment. I think I just let my family get together and they're always like, what do you do again? And I'm like, oh, I have this weird job. I teach this thing called embodiment. It's a bit like mindfulness. And that's actually, I do recognize that's a huge privilege to do what I do. And in person is always very satisfying. We don't really make any money from it as a company. But that is very satisfying. And it's also where we get our little clips. So if you're seeing little, 1-minute coaching clips on Instagram or the YouTube videos, the longer, more proper coaching sessions, that's where they come from. So we keep doing that, mostly in Slovenia and around Slovenia, where I'm moving in Feb. So that's my big life news. For those of you, some of you will have heard this, but basically I split up with my wife, Daria, last year, an amicable split up, and we're actually still good friends. I don't want to talk about it too much because it feels like quite private, but yeah, those of you who are sort of wondering if I talk about I've got a girlfriend now, my life's a bit different now, that was a big transition. Last year was a really rough year because of that, because of some health stuff. If you're watching this on YouTube, what's that? I'm in shape, I look good, thanks very much, I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I think I'm much healthier this year, and I made a decision actually last December, a year ago. I said, I'm going to focus on my health. My health's got to be number one, no matter not work, not making money, the company. Let's make health number one. And since then, that has really helped, and a lot of focus on different sort of health issues. Like I had a sleep apnea issue and a stomach issue. A lot of it was just stress from work. We had a tough year at work last year. This year, much more stable. Always busy. Don't always love, the management side, the marketing side. I'll be honest. That people always think I'm this great marketing guy, and it's like, well, I'm okay. We're competent. The team's good. I mean, I love the team. Some of you have been, who I work with. Some of you know Aussie Steve. You probably won't know Leela, who runs the email list behind the scenes. So the three of us kind of do most of the marketing. You might have met Virginia in customer support. She's always a pleasure. Helen, you've probably seen on the calls. You've done any of our courses. Auntie Helen is always just so kind and helpful. She actually volunteers as well. So this is a tiny little team. We're not this big mega company. I have a PA, a couple of people that help out with the social media. Maybe Alina, who's been managing KEC, our main course, our coaching course. Most people are either part-time, a few volunteers, and it's like a core team. Brian, who does the tech, we get on well. I think it's great to have a group of people you just get on well with as human beings. I think that's tremendously understated, actually, in terms of people always think it's what you do, but it's also how you do it. It's also how you do it, who you do it with. That's as important as what you do. So for me, yeah, that's been solid this year. There's always little strains, but for the most part, it's a group of people who like each other. We have a laugh together. We meditate in meetings. There's good banter, good piss taking, and it's a much smaller team than it used to be. A couple of years ago, I'd overemployed all these people, and it was just out of hand. I thought it was going to be this big business, and it just got too big. And now it's much more settled down, and we're just focusing really on what we do best: coach training. That's what we do best. So focusing on KEC, and the mentoring is the other side of that. Usually for KEC graduates, really enjoy the mentoring. People like Danny, whose wedding I went to in Czechia, for example. Various students I met with in Holland or in America recently. Real student-teacher relationships. That is what I think is missing often in the internet age. Maybe you listen to this podcast or you watch the YouTube channel, you can get a lot of information, but that real student-teacher relationship, I think, is tremendously underdone, and really, that is the heart of it for me, like I had with some of my teachers, like Paul Linden, and that's tremendously satisfying for me. So live events, God, I've been all over. I might have to look at my diary to just even remember the many places I've been this year. all over Europe again. Yeah, they're the main courses. Women's Rising we run. Not a huge financial success, but I know a lot of people liked it. So well done for Virginia and Helen for putting that on. What I wasn't there for. Feral Philosophy, that's been the new thing this year. Got the logo there for on YouTube. So got a whole new YouTube channel. That's for young men. Having worked a lot with women, I thought, you know what, I want to do something with young guys, raise some money for that. Thank you to all those who donated. Yeah, YouTube channel's up and running, going well. The Instagram's up, the blog, or the Substack is on the way soon. So that's been a whole project, and I've got a lot of satisfaction this year from taking young guys to the gym and doing stuff on feral philosophy, talking about that, different podcasts and things like that. So yeah, that feels very meaningful to me. Probably going to write my next book about that. Oh, books. People Pleasing book came out this year. That was a new one. Well done for Mira for helping me write that using AI. She basically took some of my talks I did in person and I used AI to make it into a book, and I just had to edit it, which was great. I was quite impressed actually with that. Obviously AI didn't write it, it was my content, but to put it together. So yeah, that's the kind of thing I think is good to use AI for, to actually just speed up the process of editing, things like that, not to replace actual real human content. So people pleasing, that's been a huge topic. We did a course on that this year. I think I'm the people unpleaser. I'm kind of, it's funny, I get called refreshing a lot. I think that's about that, and people are drawn to me. You know, it's one of the main reasons. I would say not everyone's our student. Definitely, it's people that like humor, they like practicality, and that slightly, you know, refreshing, unpeople pleasing kind of taste of things. That's our vibe, right? That's our vibe. So yeah, that came out this year. The Embodied Toolkit, which is all about different poses. Let's see, for those who are on YouTube, this is Tonya, my colleague, doing some of the poses on cards. And that's, yeah, that'll be out very shortly. It's written, it's completed, Embodied Toolkit for coaches. And I've also got another one coming out next summer that I've already written. Mainstream publication, like W.H. Smith Bookshop, your mum's going to see it kind of thing. That is going to be out. It's basically top tips and tricks kind of embodiment book. Very entry level, accessible, well illustrated, major publisher. So it's pretty cool. Feels like breaking into the mainstream a little bit. That's coming out next summer, I think. I said already completed it. And I'll probably write one for young men on meaning. I'm very, very interested in the meaning crisis. I've been deep in John Vervaeke's work this year, for those of you who know that. And deep in philosophy this year. That's been my love this year, is exploring really radical philosophy. YouTube is fantastic for this. There's a lot of stuff that wouldn't get past the normal censors that in philosophy gets through, and all different, really radical perspectives. And if you go into psychology deep enough, you get to philosophy. So that's really what I've been very, very personally interested in, like a couple of hours a day listening to philosophy this year in a whole group around that. So yeah, you'll see more of that next year in my coaching. I think next year as well, we'll do KEC, we'll do the certificate of embodiment coaching. We might do a course on embodied meditation again. I think we're going to do less courses next year, just to kind of have a calmer time in the company, more sustainable, more enjoyable. What I might do though next year is one on humor. So I've realized that my humor, yes, I'm funny. I've realized as soon as you start talking about humor and saying you're funny, it doesn't sound good, does it? Anyway, so humor and coaching, actually looking at humor more, not just like a side thing, not a bug, but actually a feature of what I do. That's going to be, yeah, I think that's going to be something we do a little course on next year. Interested in that. Probably something around meaning. I know we're turning the beginning of KEC into almost like a human flourishing course. So the beginning KEC is always about oneself, and we've found the last few years people are so burnt out, you know, exhausted, distracted, anxious, despairing, depressed. Sometimes I say dead. It's distracted, exhausted, anxious, and depressed. Because often people are coming in like that just because of the state of the world. I think we've hit this critical mass mental health-wise. We spend the first half of the course really helping people establish their own embodiment, anchoring in that. And I think I'm going to make that into almost like a human flourishing course. I think that's the way to go. So more on human flourishing with a bit of philosophy and meaning making with the embodiment, and a bit more on humor, but basically just doing our main stuff, And as I said, I love mentoring. So if you really want to do like a 2-year journey with me, then get in touch. That is the thing I most like. And what I help people with there is, as well as the marketing side of things. You know, much as I don't always love it myself, I'm actually reasonably good at it now. I'm okay at it. And I definitely can help the average sort of hippie embodiment person with that, definitely. So deep in that, helping people with the marketing side, and also just excellence in coaching. You know, KEC gives 6 months, which is a good solid introduction. But you know, a couple of years, I can really like give people feedback, give them input through that personal relationship. So get in touch one way or another if you want in on the mentoring. January is a good time to start. Okay, so now I want to overview some of the podcasts we've done this year. I've got on my computer because there's so many. 2 a week. Well done to Anastasia and Vish, the team, for getting those out. They're now also on YouTube. We have a new podcast channel on YouTube you can find as well. Let's put in Embodiment. It's called the Embodiment Coaching Podcast now. We added the coaching bit just because that's central to our business, but it's still the same general, embodiment in different ways. Just a few more on the coaching front. So yeah, I'm going to go through some of those, and this might be kind of a nice way to go, is there anything I want to go back and review? I go back and review this year. So let's see. Crazy Sexy Grief right at the beginning of the year, Jan 4th with Chris Carr. That was a good one. And then Virtuoso Coaching. So that was Joseph Riggio, who's a fantastic coach, American. He's from New Jersey, very kind of yang. So that was a good one. What else? We then did, Pete Levine we re-released on the podcast. You can see that. Right at the beginning of the year, we had Rudyard Lynch on. He's a YouTube historian, kind of controversial figure. Surprised I wasn't cancelled for hosting him. And that was really interesting. He talks about like the Civil War in America that's coming up, nihilism, Gnosticism, the body throughout history, basically. And I really like his take on things. Let's see. After that, Embodied Speaking with Petrovic. That was good. Why We Love Drugs and Phones. That was good. So this is Elisa Malaverni looking at addiction issues, basically, which, I'm long-term sober, so that's always good. Then Esther Eckhart, a famous yoga teacher, a friend of mine, actually, lovely lady. She was on What's Missing from Yoga, just like a deep chat about yoga. Let's see, who else did we have on? Science journalist John Horgan. I even forget all these great people we have on. We're talking about like quantum mechanics and stuff, really philosophical. We re-released Tom Myers from the Embodiment Conference. So every few episodes, we'll re-release, if you haven't realised by now, we'll re-release something, one of the big name speakers from the past. And the real is we just don't want that Embodiment Conference material to go to waste from 4 years ago. For those of you who don't know, 4 years ago, we did this huge event with 1,000 speakers, and we sold the recordings, so we can't re-release all of them free. But after 4 years, we're like, you know what, let's release some of them. So on the YouTube and on the podcast, some of the sort of bigger names. People now, you'd have to, like, unless they have a new book coming out, you'd have to pay to get them on. It's really interesting, actually. The situation's totally changed in the world. 4 years ago, people would come on any summit. And we have, of course, our big summit coming up in Jan, Embodiment Festival, but it's nowhere near as big as it was because the big names, some of them charge like 10 grand to come on. So we just can't afford that. One on Lucid Dreaming with Andrew Holleck. That was interesting, if you're interested in that. Why Relationships Are Hard. Good title, Mark, with Alexander Solomon. Why relationships are hard, aren't they? I'm in a new one that's going well, but they are hard. Oh, I love this one. Brain Hemispheres and Woke with Ian McGilchrist. So he is the real deal. He is a smart man. Also just very generous, good-natured. That was one of my favourite ones of the year. It's 579. And his thing is like brain hemispheres, but he's also sort of not too keen on the woke thing. It's interesting, the woke thing. I think it's passing now as a wave. I've had my run-ins with it. I think people have realised it's not very kind. It's not really very wise. It is quite divisive. Hopefully, I know we've got some people listening that are still really into it, but I think people have seen through it at this point. As I said, I've had my run-ins with it. It's definitely pushed me further right, I'd say, politically, but it's, it's not nice. Okay, George Cowan was on next. He's a good mate of mine, ethical marketing coach. And we try and have a few like marketing people on the podcast to help out, so people can learn some of that. Steve Hoshkinson was there. Again, a mate of mine, post-traumatic growth. He's very cool. We did one focusing on humor with Brian Thierry, somatic psychologist. I think this is, definitely an edge for me for next year. Well, we play with Oliver. That's good on play. Richard Davidson. So what meditation doesn't fix? This guy's an actual meditation expert in a world of pretenders, I would say. Richard Davidson's really well worth a look, and if you're interested in meditation. Humanitarian mental health for those in the NGO sector. So Tanya is one of my students, also a friend and colleague. Tanya comes from the NGO world, the humanitarian sector. We share quite a lot of sort of war stories in that one. You'll see a whole other side of me if you didn't listen to that one. What else we got? One about from people pleasing when we were promoting that in April. 20 signs you're a people pleaser. That was a good one. Growing a social media following without hating yourself. Another good marketing one. Daniel Ingram, awesome meditation teacher, talks about enlightenment, dark nights of the soul. Daniel's great. That was a good one in April. Meditation. Gay trauma and sexuality, yeah, with Florian, who's my colleague from Berlin. He's one of the people involved in Pride Berlin. So that was really leading edge conversation. Yes, it's funny, like, I'm not woke, as people know, but I have pretty like diverse guests on and diverse interests. So yeah, Florian has got a lot to say there. Sleep Better with Masha. Yeah, another one of my ex-mentees. She is a sleep specialist now, useful for a lot of us. The Art of Touch with Sophie Kinkel from Berlin. Good one on touch. Education and embodiment. There's not a lot of people working in the education sector in embodiment, but Emery does. He's out of New York, so he's worth a look. Powerlifting through trauma. So trauma-sensitive weightlifting with Laura. That's actually Laura Kodari, is it? That's the thing, trauma-sensitive weightlifting. And we did an episode on that. That's in May. Adam Husler, a yoga friend of mine. That was about content and making content. Who else? Ron from the Embodiment Conference. She's an NVC teacher. I enjoy that. Oh, attachment style one. Stan Tatkin. So attachment styles got really big. Have they noticed this? We also had Adam Lane Smith on later in the year, who's an attachment specialist, and Stan Tatkin's another big one. Attachment's kind of got cool now. It's very interesting that it's sort of fashionable now, attachment. So yeah, kind of interesting that it's got cool. So what to say about that? I just think it's interesting that attachment I've learned a lot from. I think it makes a nice supplement to embodiment if you're interested in trauma. So learning about attachment, I would recommend just for your sake of your own relationships and well-being. Watch the one with Stan, the one with Adam Lane Smith. We had Daniel Millman on. He did The Peaceful Warrior. So Daniel Millman, wrote a book that was A Way of the Peaceful Warrior that was pretty famous, and it was interesting. Thomas Hubel, that was one I did loads of prep for on achievement. I mean, I was genuinely impressed by him. He's become an increasingly big name, and I can see why. Thomas Hubel is the real deal. So I was, genuinely impressed by him. And I see a lot of people, and some people that come on, I'm skipping over. It's like influencers who really are not impressive. Whereas Hubel, he's the real deal. And we might disagree on a few things, but I like the guy a lot. Business Models for Hippies with Gemma Gilbert. Yeah, another good one from a kind of marketing side, as is Slow Sales with Caroline Leon. We don't want to release those side by side, but they were two good ones in the summer on marketing. I recommend those two ladies, which is nice. Oh, the next one. Shout out to Vish, my PA, for hooking me up with Kasia Abanayak. Not literally hooking me up, though that would be my dream. Anyway, so she's one on submission and power. She's actually become a friend since. And Kasia, I love. She is amazing, original, sexy, sparky, edgy. Love Kasia. Love her, love her, love her. So definitely check that one out. Where are we up to? June. I am so lucky who I get to speak to, right? I am so lucky. So, yeah. Good. Next up, Andrew Coates, good fitness guy, just one on food and fitness. You know, I got very into fitness this year through the feral philosophy, lost a lot of weight, lost about 15 kilos for, if you see old pictures of me, put on a lot of muscle, but, you know, mostly it's about being healthy. And people like Andrew Coates, Coates, they just give really good advice on fitness. So if you want some sensible fitness advice, I had Ruby Wax on. I actually saw her in person, had breakfast with her, hung out with her a little bit. She's big in the sort of mental health space in the UK. For those that don't know Ruby, recommend her. So she's a lot of fun, kind of sassy. Dance Doctor Peter Lovett. We've been trying to get him on for ages. He's an academic who does work with dance and movement. So that was interesting. Queen Age Bullshit with Julie Martin. Julie's an old yoga friend, just like a senior figure in the yoga world. It's just a lot of fun. Love her style. So one for the yogis. Self-compassion with Krista McGurmer. So he does a lot of self-compassion stuff and is, you know, big on the compassion research. So I recommend him. Oh, sexual trauma green flags. So often people talk about red flags, but I had an old friend of mine, Chana Casellan from California, who's like a sexuality coach who's very trauma informed. and what are the green flags of sexuality, that you've healed some trauma, that you're available emotionally. So she's still a sort of go-to for me, Jana, like personally. Business Without Social Media with Bradley. So those of you who don't want to do social media, check that out. Oh, this was a fun one. How to Start an American Cult. Keith Martin, who's a Zen teacher and author. He's an old mate of mine. It's interesting, actually. When I have old friends on, often the rapport is very strong and the podcast goes really well. Often they're sort of fun ones. So he was good. Testosterone with Jacob. If you want to learn about testosterone, look up that one with Jacob Brand. We had Christian Neff on. We didn't exactly click, but I won't go more into that. Johan Hari. So this is one of the ones I've prepared most for. So he's a bit of a legendary author and journalist in the UK. I really just got a brain on him. And nice guy. I flirted with him a lot, I'm going to be honest. His book on Magic Pill. I was lucky to get him on. He's a big deal in the UK, and I'm in touch with him since. One of the nice things the podcast is good for, actually, is just kind of like making connections. I don't like the word networking, but yeah, making connections, and people like Johan Hari that are just awesome. Philosophy of Strength with Joe Lombardo. That's great if you're interested in the weightlifting stuff. He's a real like academic in the field, or go to Greek philosophy and this kind of thing. Sam Parfit reminds me, he was mental health and sports is his thing, so I should definitely get him back on. He's a good mate. And this is one of my favourite ones of the year. If you don't catch this next one, Caroline Lovewell, Existentially Kinky. So she wrote the book Existential Kink. A hilarious podcast. I'm surprised it didn't get me cancelled, to be honest. We do the Trump blowjob challenge in that one. It's a little bit ridiculous and out there, pretty wild. Then we had Michael Milliman on. He's a translator of a really controversial philosopher, so I was quite anxious about that one. Check it out. He was a good guy, though. Very respectful, good guy. As was David Emerson, who does trauma-sensitive yoga. We couldn't disagree more, I think, on politics. But it's nice to meet someone on the left who's still sort of reasonable and conversational. That's actually quite rare. I found David's tone very good. We exchanged emails afterwards. I think we see the world very differently, but I respect him. Karin Van Manen, one of our in-house teachers on teaching and yoga. She was great. Good. Who else did we have on? Sheridan Roof, she was good. Nervous system, money and eating, looking at the state of nervous systems, how that relates to food and to money. Just topics that a lot of people have stuff with. I liked her a lot. Should text her. Breathwork and psychedelics. What is the Embodied Toolkit with my colleague Vidya Dasa. Mike Israetel. Oh, I love this one. I was quite nervous. So Mike Israetel is probably one of the biggest YouTubers for strength and fitness. One of the biggest ones out there. So he is a great guy. Really smart. Bodybuilder guy, so not for everyone. Who else? Leslie Kamenoff, another old yoga friend, yoga AI and business, great rapport with him. And then Zuby, I love Zuby. Yes, again, some listeners might not like Zuby. He's kind of right wing in some ways. I think he's just sensible though. Very smart guy, very wise, very kind. Really like Zuby. I don't think that episode got nearly enough views on YouTube, so just look up Zuby Mark Walsh. It needs some love, that episode. I think it got the algorithm suppressed it because some of the stuff we talked about. And, this is an issue for those who listen to the podcast. You just get fed the podcast regularly. You just get given it. But YouTube will suppress their shit out of certain topics. It really has become political in terms of what they will and won't show. And that is a problem for us. So I think it's an issue for the whole world that we're really being fed certain things by the algorithm, which is not neutral. It's people want you to hear certain things and not others. So yes, that is a conspiracy, and I definitely see that in the results and stats we see. So podcasting is still pretty clean in the sense that, if someone subscribes to a podcast, they get the episodes, but not on social media. Yoga Men and Martial Arts. Adrien. So Adrien's from France, so it was interesting talking about French culture. He hosted a summit in France, so it was very interesting talking to him. Giten Tonkov on breath and trauma. Again, different cultural stuff. We had Katerina from the Sane Ukraine project. It's interesting, this year, Sane Ukraine, I've handed back to the team. So that was always the plan after 2 years. I became a proud sort of trauma granddaddy this year. It's one of my biggest achievements in my life. that I said, you guys have got this. I mentored you for 2 years. They did their first teacher training without me. I supervised, I helped a little bit, sorted out a couple of problems they had. But basically, I'm no longer responsible for Sane Ukraine, and that was always the plan. It's totally appropriate that it's run by local women. I am so proud of them, so proud of them. Katerina, you'll hear some of the stories from that. Not always easy listening, but for those of you who did support Sane Ukraine over 2 years ago now, thank you so much. That is one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And I don't want to blow my own trumpet too much, but there's very few times in life you do something that you think that really was good for the world and achieve something and we can be proud of. And I'm mostly just proud of the girls. I just started it off, and it's so good that they've essentially sort of grown up and they're doing it themselves and they're achieving amazing things. So if you haven't caught that one, 638 with Katerina Timokinka, that's well worth a listen. On the other end of the spectrum, Trump, space aids and smashing II, Robbie Carlton. That was just a fun, silly one. We had Ken Wilber on. A lot of people got upset in the comments on YouTube there. Oh my God. I think he doesn't much like woke culture either. He's a well-known philosopher, integral theory. Okay, next up's a fun one. Anne Geiser. She used to be a spy, and I can say that because she said that on a TED Talk. Dutch, actually met her in the Netherlands. Very cool person. Came to my training in the Netherlands as well and met up with her. Anne Geiser at 641, really fun episode on body language. Then we had Stephen Law, who's a philosophy professor at Oxford University, trans bullshit and philosophy. So we talk about body-mind stuff there. And from a philosophical point of view, it's funny how scared people are around that topic, really. As soon as trans is an issue that relates to embodiment, right? Body, mind, man and woman's body, that kind of thing. Hardly anyone in the embodiment world will touch that topic. They won't even talk about it because they're so scared, which I think says more. It says a lot. Who was on next? Kathleen King. Love her. She's the real deal. She's her primal trust work around recovery from health issues and pain issues. Yeah, then we had Adam Lane-Smith on. He's just one of the wisest people that I know in the therapeutic space. He's also one of the few conservative psychologists. He's kind of outwardly conservative psychologist, which is so rare. And it's so weird, isn't it, that most of our psychologists come from the liberal side. So even if you're like super left and liberal, surely you must realize there's more than one way of looking at the world. And I think that is one of the main distortions we're facing in psychology. If you look at most of the trauma teachers, for example, I'm pretty much the only one who's not far left. And even if you are far left, surely you must realize that half the world isn't stupid. It's actually not half the world, it's 90% of the world and half of the West. So, what else? We did some coaching demos on there. We have really re-released Tammy Simon from Sounds True, from the Embodiment Conference. Breath is God. This one got loads of downloads with Petri, who's a philosopher who focuses on breath from Finland, a bit different. We had Christina on a course, who has been great to work with all year. Just always great to work with Christina. She's my co-trainer on Keck. There's other trainers like Flower and Renko, other cool people, but Christina's the main other trainer that I work with. Patricia, I've worked with a little bit this year as well, always great, from Mexico, but Christina's the main one. And she's just a star. Really, always enjoy working with her. I think we're going to work together for years. How to coach with the body for experienced coaches. That was a bit more in depth. Roger Walsh, no relation. So integral thinker, a bit of a philosopher. What else we had recently? The last one was on burnout, fatigue, and long COVID. So yeah, wow, what a year. Aren't I lucky, all the people that I get to speak to? It's kind of wild. Mostly I do the podcast, not as a marketing thing, but as a learning thing. Mostly a little bit of networking, a little bit of marketing. But, I hope some of you listening to this will go, oh yeah, I want to check out Keck, and that's great. But I don't think we mostly use it for that. Mostly it's just a way for me to learn. I'm also looking back through my diary here now. I went to Lake of Constance in Austria. That was beautiful. Thank you, Anna, for hosting me there if you're out there. Did a workshop in Money in Frome, locally to where I am. I was in Vienna. I was in a storm there in Vienna. I was at the wedding in Czechia. I was in Turin for a day while on holiday in Italy. What else? Where else was I this year? Slovenia, which was gorgeous. There's a reason I'm moving there. By the way, if you want to just see how gorgeous the country is, then come to one of our workshops in Slovenia. They're not super expensive, and it is one of the loveliest countries in Europe with really lovely people. So Slovenia. Pula in Croatia, that was fun. So nice town. Stockholm, remarkably beautiful city in summer. Did a workshop there. It's very green. It's the city where I think nature and humans coexist the best. There's forest, there's lakes, there's big rocks in the city. It's really wild, actually. I think I wouldn't want to be there in winter, and sometimes it is a little bit too woke for me, but I would say maybe they're getting past that actually now. And it's just beautiful. So Stockholm in the summer, recommended. Went there. Let's see, where else did I go? I forget, I'm looking back through my diary. I did a sort of British tour. I went back to Brighton, which is decadent. London. God, all the big cities in England are falling apart. I don't recommend any of the big cities. Oh, Nice. I had a bit of a holiday in Nice in the south of France. I love that. I loved it. I'll take it all back about the French. It's just Paris I don't like. Nice was great. Really enjoyed Nice in the spring. I have a good life, don't I? Slovenia again, Brussels. We did a centering workshop there. Brussels is always pretty average, but I don't love Brussels. Zurich was fun. We were right by the river. You can actually swim in the river. I actually really enjoyed Zurich. It's got a reputation as being kind of dull and stiff, but I had a great date with someone from Google, some good friends. Went to a spa nearby. One of my students took me to a spa, which was great. Really enjoyed Zurich. I won't be there for a couple of years. Berlin, never liked Berlin, but full of interesting, cool people. Don't like the city much. Yeah, I'll be back in Berlin this year, this January, I think. So back in Berlin, that was February. My God, that seems a long time ago. I crammed so much in a year. And then Amsterdam again. I was in Amsterdam twice this year. Look at that. Yeah, 2-day coaching workshop. Oh, I remember that one. It was in a karate dojo, but we couldn't get the heating working. we don't use that now. Oh my God, what a year. What a bunch of stuff I get to do. I'm going to be finishing the year cuddled up in Italy, happy for Christmas. So life's all right. Life's all right. What's my Christmas message? I should say something profound, shouldn't I? Christmas message. I think life's quite difficult for a lot of people. I think a lot of people just are overwhelmed. I think we're hitting the problems of the meaninglessness of material modernity. If that's not too many M's from Mark. I think we're hitting that, and something's going to give. I think it might not be pretty. I think it might be rough times ahead, if I'm honest. But I also know that people with some of these tools are much better equipped. Like, I suffer from the same things everyone suffers from, whether it be being irritable or money worries or whatever, but I feel much better equipped because of the embodiment. I see the same thing with my colleagues, like much better equipped. So, yeah, that gives me a bit of hope. In terms of the business, focusing on coaching, a little bit of other stuff next year, as I said, a bit of stuff on humour, a bit of stuff on weightlifting with the young men. Saying Ukraine will keep doing their thing without me, sending them love from afar and occasionally checking in with them. That's us. And I guess lastly, thank you. Thank you for letting me do what I love, not having to get a proper job. Every day where I'm teaching embodiment is a good day. And I think that's huge, right? It's huge to be able to do that. And I wouldn't be able to do that without you guys supporting us, obviously booking in our courses. Do that. If you want to come as a coach, of course, come to Keck, look it up on the website. If you can't afford our courses, I hope the free content we produce, which is a lot, like with the podcast and the YouTube and the Instagram, there's a lot of good stuff for you there. So I hope that's useful. Hope you love that stuff. And if you do love that stuff and you're just constantly eating up our free stuff, fine. If you want to thank us, send it to a friend. Send one of these episodes to someone you think will benefit, someone that will thank you. Give us a quick star rating or whatever. But the main one is just pass it on. That would be appreciated. So thank you, everyone, for another year of embodiment.